because you're not going to throw me in there and I'm not going to create a blockbuster movie. My lighting's still going to be all messed up no matter how good the tool is, because I don't know that aperture and all that good stuff that comes with it. But I think it's the same vice versa, like with whether it's GTM or like being a hedge fund manager. Like, you could give me the hedge fund tools, I'm probably still not going to be able to create best hedge fund on Wall Street.
Or maybe Omni handles that, because that would be pretty interesting. Just thinking about at scale, if you had some screenshots of what your prospect, and then you created a 45-second video of them being the hero of like corporate IT with your solution. I mean, what ego would not love that, right? Can you imagine the scoping questions? How many agents do you have? How many agents are going to need access to Salesforce in my database? What are the concurrent calls your agents are going to make? Like, and I bet if you have most people today, they're going to have no freaking idea.
Teams at, Anthropic and OpenAI had in Republic, let's just buy or deploy 4 deployed engineers so we can start figuring out what telemetry we need. Like, let's just make it look like we're coming in to help people, but let's actually try to figure out where we need to start measuring things. All right, so did you say you played with it, or you don't have the access?
I think I have the access, but I needed to sign in and I was busy kind of prepping for this and other stuff for work. But yeah, I saw someone kind of do a quick one. She did it, I want to say sub 15 minutes. And essentially you upload some of your own, screenshots so we could take, things from this, recording. And then I think she has shots of the keyboard and then maybe an audio file. And so then it learns your voice, customizes it. It was
Sure.
crazy how fast she got to an output.
Here, let's try something real quick. How do I stop sharing real quick? Let me just try something. Do you mind if I take a screenshot of you?
Go.
Put you in a comic book. All right, let's see if this works. I'll share it while we go.
All right.
I'll turn it
It's
back.
so my kids, they love it. Well, so they're like, Daddy, that's you. And so when I sign into Google or YouTube or different things, it's got my headshot up there, right? But then now the podcast is up and they're like, Dad. And so like I'm on TV or something, and it's just funny.
Let's see.
Future GTM.
Let's see what it does.
Takes a minute for an image. It's going to take 20 minutes for this video. We'll see what happens.
2 minutes. Okay, so it's taking a few minutes. So we'll let this run in real time, people.
Yeah.
We're leading edge.
Nice. Yeah, we'll kick it off with the headlines and come back to it. I mean, a lot of the stories this week are related to AI. So you want to stop sharing? Look at upgrade. Google's trying to get their money, and then I'll
Yeah. There we go.
boom. All right. It's a busy week. So the headline here: the buying question moved off of the model and onto the runtime. So just kind of crazy. So there's kind of 3 themes here. So you've got like Microsoft bets on OpenClaw. They mentioned OpenClaw 28 times. They shipped MAI, so that's one of their frontier models that they essentially are only a couple months behind some of the other ones. I just think it's interesting related to, I think they said OpenAI 4 times. So I think the bromance is over between OpenAI and Microsoft. Then, OpenAI ended up really, I almost feel the pendulum coming back for Codex and OpenAI. So they've rolled out Codex, these, copycat features, just like Claude did for OpenClaw, right? You see Codex doing the same thing. So OpenAI's prosumer pivot, sites, annotations, 62 apps, non-devs are now 20% of their users. It's pretty interesting. Everybody counted OpenAI out, but then they still own the B2C market, right? For just your general chat in a lot of ways. And I think they're sharing that with Google, and then Claude owns enterprise, but Codex, I mean, I think it's a little early to be counting them out. Anthropic signaled they're at the full end of the Golden Corral token all you can eat plans. And so everybody goes to these virtual pools. Essentially, if you spend $20, you get an extra $20 in credits for quote unquote, like your APIs. So think third-party harnesses or their agent SDK to run, right? Anything headless. token maxing reckoning. I mean, there's been so many conversations, so many articles on how to reduce tokens, which we'll chat a little bit about later. Net, stop using the frontier for everything, right? Let's actually, use some deterministic workflows. This number 5 here is like what I've been preaching for a while, or believe for a while. I don't know if I've been preaching. The agent, the differentiator is now the model plus the harness, not just the model, right? AGI is not around the corner. Everybody recognizes that. Now your, code generation, that's your first harness. And then you see all these other people, creating moats around their own harnesses. Product-led growth is kind of still important, but now we're in the distribution era, they say. So kind of phase 3 is like, how do you get your audience and scale up quickly, right? You almost have to do this at the same time as you're developing your product. For us, GTM B2B folks, Agentforce by Salesforce crosses $1.2 billion, which if you think about all the AR of all the startups, that's really freaking impressive. 205% year-over-year growth. I think they're basically saying their core business, yeah, that may be single digits for the foreseeable future, but they're pivoting hard. And I'm sure Service Desk and Zendesk and HubSpot and everybody else is too. And in fact, we know they are. So it's going to be interesting to see, are these agent-focused headless platforms going to be growing single digits, double digits, or triple digits? And Salesforce just did triple digits. Then we got ARR in an AI world. So this is really, you hear all these stories. Anthropic is like 44 billion or 56 billion or 30 billion. It depends on the month. But then, oh, how are they calculating that? The last month times 12. Oh, this one company said they spent 50 million, $500 million in a month because they didn't have any limits. And so this begs the question of, should you be counting that as ARR? Like, so Only CFO has some great comments on this in his latest article. And it's just like, you shouldn't factor POCs into your annual recurring revenue. Like, that's not a contract. How do you do 100% usage based? And it's just kind of interesting, how, AWS is a publicly traded company. It's the run rate, but it's always like actuals. So if you have somebody that overspent, it'll come back down. It'll reflect in the business. And now in this private company, until we get the S1 from Anthropic, it's gonna be really interesting. And the last one is, I kind of threw it in there, but it's Wall Street Journal. So there's a Keynes film that came out, cost $500,000, 100% AI, $500,000 to make. Of the $500,000, 400,000 was credits for like Veo 3 or Kling or whatever, video generation. What was interesting to me is essentially they weren't putting out a movie just to make an artistic statement. It was more of showing the value of their harness, because part of the challenge with video and image is the consistency in lighting. And the shocker here that I call that, like, that was in the article that I thought was interesting, was the amount of technical film skill and know-how you have to have in order to prompt correctly. The average prompt being 3,000 words is insane. So it kind of goes back to the headline number 5, right? The harness is the moat. And so I just thought this was like a real world example with real dollars. And so I think that bodes well, for all of us and where our differentiation lies. So with that, what caught your eye? No lack of things going on this week.
No, the movie was interesting. I saw it as well, but I think it goes back to something we've talked about often, is like, you still need the like SMEs, or like the orchestrator, the subject matter expert, because you're not going to throw me in there and I'm not going to create like a blockbuster movie. Like, my lighting's still going to be all messed up no matter how good the tool is, because I don't know that aperture and all that good stuff that comes with it. But I think it's the same vice versa, like with whether it's GTM or like being a hedge fund manager. Like, you could give me the hedge fund tools, I'm probably still not going to be able to create best hedge fund on Wall Street.
It's just, if this was true, that I could give my 3.5-year-old access to ChatGPT or Claude Code and build a new business. So yeah, I would have to agree with you.
Yeah. The ARR is interesting too. I saw one, and I don't know if it was just like, not actual or factual, but the Uber came out and they said like, oh, we're pausing. We've already burnt through like our spend. But then I saw it was circulating, so who knows if it's real but they said that now they're allocating, it's like $1,250 a month to each engineer. So like, that's your token spend. You get 1,250. Now, with that said, you aggregate all the engineers that get that budget, they're probably still getting a relatively good like discount. So like 1,250 to you and I who are just like, hey, here's 1,200 to spend on, Claude, it's probably not the same like enterprise private pricing they're getting. So, but it is interesting.
Yeah. I think it's 1,500 per month so it's per tool cap and cursor and Claude Code per sources June 3rd. I mean, I don't know that that's bad, right? Like, and again, I think it's going to push us into the more efficient token usage, and then you're going to get more out of that versus just giving everybody full access and just being able to like, I- you've never, I don't think you always gated your infrastructure and your high costs, right? And this is kind of the first time where you've had this FOMO and this massive multi-billion. I mean, you wouldn't just give the intern access to all your Spark clusters, right? Running your Hadoop jobs overnight. I mean, it was tightly coupled because these overruns are super real. So it's, but it is interesting that $1,500, if you say, so if you sign up for a Claude Max $200 one, and let's say the subsidies are between, oh, let's say, a 10 and a 20 tokens. So essentially they're going to, $1,500 will buy you, is the equivalent of a B2C Claude Max $200 subscription based on the subsidies, which I thought was kind of interesting. But I can still do a lot with my Claude Max, and I don't use all my stuff except for like certain windows of time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm sure there's probably some additional discounting. I could be wrong, but yeah,
Well, the discounts are less than you would think, usually single digits,
yeah,
because
true.
there's no money. There's no
Yeah.
more. GPUs are expensive.
Yeah. No, but I mean, yeah, but the ARR comment I think is real because it is true. Like, can you really book against it? Or is it just like here today, gone tomorrow? Because I wonder, like, in my org, like what we're looking at, how they would book that. Like, I think we stopped paying for or like the premium Gemini. Like, we just now use the one that comes with the G Suite before we had like the premium. But I think they saw that like, oh, we're using, Claude and OpenAI more, so we're not going to spend on Gemini as well. The
Sorry about that.
here's no,
That's
no,
real.
no, good. I think here, let me share. Sorry, no, that's not the right one. Here, let's share this real quick. Your comic book has arrived. You ready? Real quick. It,
Let's see it.
and it actually came up right as you started talking on your first slide. So this was actually came out really pretty quick.
You got 10 seconds.
Consider this market dominated.
Did you did you hear it?
Consider this market dominated.
Yeah.
That's
I mean, that yeah. Maybe we should do a real life one to see how they structure you into it. But
yeah, we'll play with the Omni. I think there's some articles out there how you can prompt it to create keep the consistency, or maybe Omni handles that, because that would be pretty interesting. Just thinking about at scale, if you had some screenshots of what your prospect, and then you created a 45-second video of them being the hero of like corporate IT with your solution. I mean, what ego would not fucking love that, right?
no, it's true. I think you shared it, and then I went back through and I actually did my own where you broke down the Claude interview with the Claude CFO or the CRO, where she talked about how they're using it. And one of the things they do is they say like, go after the call. They have Claude spin up a custom HTML site. So very like
Consider
similar to
this
that,
market
like,
dominated.
now you send over, instead of the custom HTML site, you send them the custom comic book.
Well, it's but so one of the examples I use, this is internal, but we had a couple pretty technical conversations about some integrations and such. I needed to align our internal teams with the customer, and so I used Quick Desktop. I fed in the transcripts. I fed in some architecture documents. I was like, hey, like help me outline this, like where the technical constraints, option one versus option two, and all this. It really helps because that would have taken me days. I think I got it out same day, Monday or Tuesday, when I started working on it. Before, I would have had to call up the SA. I would have had to get a meeting with the product or engineering team, say, is this right? Did I miss this? And I was like, dude, this is at least 80% plus. And I just fired it off to their C-suite. So, I mean, Yeah, dude, it's crazy what you can get, if you feed in the real context from those customer calls to like that you just would have taken week or two before. And
Yeah.
I'm fairly
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, everything is, I think the efficiency is picking up where, we use the Fellow, which is our video recording one. And I used to like copy and paste like my updates. And now like I just go into Claude similar to what you're doing. And I just say, hey, give me a WBR based off all of my meetings this week.
Yep. Yeah, it's gonna be interesting. So right now we have some like purpose-built tools, with Claude for Enterprise or your prompt. I know there's some settings where you can choose balanced, smartest, or fast. And so I kind of like that. So I'm sure they're doing things on the back end to kind of route that. But it's interesting when you also hear about Harvey and other like SaaS providers who have, a lot of data and how they're using Quen models, open source, and essentially using an open source kind of worker. And then they call into they called into like, I think Opus 4.7 as an advisor, as a tool call, rather than just letting it run and run and run. And so I'm kind of excited to see, how's Agentforce, how's HubSpot, how's Clay going to incorporate that or Adtio and like, change kind of the dynamics of what you can do. Cause I don't know about you, but with Claude, because I don't hit my limits and I'm only, I pay a flat fee. I don't optimize anything. And it's always almost defaulted to the highest thing, to whatever the latest model is. And I think the default is high thinking, which burns a ton of tokens. So it just doesn't feel sustainable, but it's easy and I'm not feeling the pain yet. So, but obviously some people are.
Yeah. Yeah. I think too, a lot of it is maybe you're not burning enough because you're not doing enough. You need to be maxing out like any thought. You just need to be putting it in and be like,
Maybe I'm going the opposite way. I feel like these days I need more space to do deep thinking and to read and process what is being created. Cause I get in this weird sensation of I've produced a lot, but I haven't read it because Claude produced it. I was the input and it was the output creator. And so it just I feel like a disconnect from reality of like, is this good? I can, I don't know. Can you relate? No, am I on crazy island?
no, I think it varies. Yeah, I think yes and no. I don't know. I, yeah, I don't have a comment on that. I think it varies. Like, I still find it super useful, but then, yeah, there's sometimes I'm wondering that like if I'm not using it enough to think through things. So I don't know.
Give me an example.
Like, I think I shared one with you earlier this week, that like post I put up, but I have some, I guess I don't call it administrative like stuff, but like I still use like different tools, like let's call it like Google Sheets for like tracking certain things that aren't tracked in Salesforce, which, maybe I could just like consult myself, but like I have this like customer touch thing where I built this like spreadsheet that like auto updates when I make a comment, and I'll say, okay, you've touched this customer like 3 times. And I'm like, and I keep telling myself, I should just like turn this into an app, or like, what could I do that would improve this? Or like when I fed in that churn ratio that I built, and then we actually had already done it in like our metabase, but then I just wanted to see Claude do it. Claude actually like poked holes in my initial framework, which was very cool. And so like, if I hadn't had thrown it in there and just kept going off the existing one, it wouldn't have surfaced and called out like the things that not were misleading, but were probably giving false flags. Cause it was like, I was calculating, churn, and like the weight was the same for a customer who was doing 500K a month as a customer was doing like 1 million. And so I was weighting them the same, but Claude was like, no, you're doing that completely incorrect, because you got somebody also who's doing 10K a month that you're weighting the same as $1 million a month. Those are not the same type of customers.
Yeah, no, agree. That's a good call. by it. Have you started playing with Codex much and trying to? So I'm hearing this trend, best practice, I don't know what you want to call it, where essentially you have one as the creator, one as the editor, and you're using different model providers. So if Anthropic models are creating, then you have Codex, if, one's personality is the writer and the author, and then the other one's the editor and reviewer, and they both think they're right. And they don't ever compare notes. So it's kind of an interesting, and so they're independent. And so they can really kind of like argue. I don't know. And it's supposed to produce something better with code or writing.
Yeah, that's a good concept. I mean, I think the Claude released the multi-agent manager or whatever, but I think that would be something similar where you could have your critical thinking agent, or model that's always challenging the other models.
Yeah. And there was the CEO founder of Saster was saying that's something that Replit and what's the other, Lovable are doing all the time, because they're saying those platforms are very, very cost sensitive. And so you're seeing a lot of pressure. And so they may give a little bit more latency. They're going to use the sonnets or the haikus of the world or open source. But they've also, in order to check the quality of a lower model, rather than just paying the premium and getting a higher efficacy, they're just pointing to another model after it to review it and then to tell it to fix it. And it's kind of like I don't know if you want to call it, it's not a distilled version, but it's a hybrid model. And that seems to be the emerging trend from all this is, whether or not you manually route different requests, only 20% can go to the top model, set your default to mid. I heard some other interesting recommendations, don't overuse skills, because skills eat up a lot of your context window. And then there's some obvious ones, don't treat if it's a Google search and you're just looking for how do I do this command in Linux, don't use it, your large language model for that. So it's been interesting. Also with the emergence of Gamma 4, did you see that? The 12 billion parameter only uses 16 gigs of memory. It is multimodal. So it can process audio and give you transcripts, and you can just run it on your local machine. Yeah, dude, I'm really starting to wonder where exactly are the moats for the labs?
Yeah, that's true. I don't
Because
know.
right now they're not making money. They're just lighting it on fire. Everyone else is making money.
Yeah, no, that is true. I don't have, I'm trying to think of a successful, open source, company.
Yeah, well, that's
Right.
Elastic, Grafana Labs, Databricks, right? They created Spark, Cloudera, Hadoop, Red Hat. I don't know what the multiples are on those PEs, but they're probably not as great as Anthropics or Tesla's even. But Tesla's excessive.
Yeah. But I mean, a lot of things you just touched on, though, also I think for me, when you were talking about managing the routing and building, maybe that's where the forward deployed engineer comes into play. I know we were talking about it off camera earlier, but where's the, you know, you and I could go sell APIs, whatever, but where's the excitement? But then the forward deployed engineers is maybe that's where it comes into play with these large, you know, organizations is you build the framework of how the, you know, their AI is going to work, the interface that they're using, so that, your engineers and everybody can be cutting edge, but, you type in what's the command line prompt for this, it automatically just rejects you to a Google search, verse. And that would be again, something maybe you would, for a deployed engineer could help them build out those routing models versus
Yeah.
saying, oh, we're spending, $1 million a year on, Claude.
Well, it just reminds me of all this, reminds me of every kind of technological emergence of a technology where, you have the buzz, you can do so much cool stuff with cloud, and then you realize, oh, it's really expensive. We need to put in savings plans. Can we do a commitment? You have entire, FinOps orgs created, cloud optimization tooling that feeds in Cost Explorer. Oh, why do you have these zombie VMs? It doesn't mean the inherent technology is bad, It's just like now you need so many other like systems and guardrails to help manage it to make sure it's optimized. And so it kind of just feels like we're in the same spot because you could do these routers. So the routers have some intelligence, but how do you really know the router is doing it best for your business? Right. And so that's where, do you need your own version of it? Where I think Factory just came out with their own router. What is it? The one that like open something, they have their own router, right? Where they host all the models and they'll decide for you. But you need also an eval system. And then you need people that understand the eval system to know, like, and then you need people who are actually understand what the output should be to look at the outputs and say, yes, the eval system is fine tuned. So, and it just feels like we're going all the way back to fucking model drift of traditional ML inference. It's like, we're just like, just like stuck in this infinite loop, which, hey, if we just stopped today, all the labs, and we just implemented this for the next 5 years, I think we could do amazing things. But it's still, you got to put in the work, which is crazy to reconcile with. I think Anthropic just said, oh, AI is becoming like self-recursive. We should pause development. And it's like, it's like, which is it, guys? I can't fucking tell, man.
Yeah, but I think you just hit on like all the opportunities within the space because your analogy to like, Cost Explorer and like cloud economics and all of this, I don't call them sub industries, but all of the teams that did set up shop for purpose built, like we only are like cloud financial management. And we either like a provider or we built like a tool that's built on top of like AWS's. But to your point, like a lot of those got acquired, gobbled up, or became very successful. So yes, people out there listening, there's like all these niches. So start figuring out where, you know, build your niche on top of it.
Truly, because I mean, a little bit of hyperbole, but do you want to go sell electricity tomorrow? Quit your job and sell electricity?
Yeah.
Maybe
No.
not. No. So not to shit in these companies. They have people doing really cool stuff, but the power utility companies are doing amazing things with mechanical engineering and thermodynamics and all that stuff too. But if you go back and you believe the analogy of LLMs are general purpose, so are you helping sell the applications and harnesses that are built on top of those models, and that's how you get to go sell and differentiate? Or are you selling electricity? Because electricity, while really cool, and like my background's engineering, like I don't want to sell that. That's not fun. So it's kind of an interesting dichotomy of like, oh, everybody wants to work there, but like, what are you selling? It's like, well,
Yeah.
now they're selling Claude Code. I mean, obviously, like that's what they're selling, but it's kind of, it was an interesting epiphany this week. It's like, I don't want to sell electricity, so what
Yeah.
do I want to sell?
Kind of,
Outcome. So,
yeah. The outcomes, use it, how to use it effectively.
yeah,
But
which I think to your point on the partners and the services and like that, maybe that's right. It's like, how do I use electricity to solve this problem in my business or my customer's business or build that domain, bringing my domain knowledge to say, this is how you can do it in an innovative way. And you're actually doing something that's never been done before, which is kind of cool to think about.
yeah, I mean, and even to go on to your analogy, like as you just mentioned, now you become the electrician. So when the condo is being stood up, they bring you in and you pipe in all the like electricity and set up the grid internally.
Yeah. Or, help them with fix their appliances or whatever it is. Pick your analogy. So it's interesting. There was an, a graphic, I think maybe it was from Microsoft. And I know we didn't talk a lot about Microsoft's frontier models, but they released a ton of them. I think there was 7 of them that they released. It was pretty amazing. Again, it just goes back. You've got OpenAI, Google, Google DeepMind, you've got Anthropic, you've got Microsoft, Amazon has a frontier model. I don't know what they're doing right now with it. And then you got all the open source ones. It's going to be interesting how everything plays out. But kind of back to Salesforce and GTM, the future is headless, right? So you're going to have UI, you're going to have seats for humans, but you now know that agents are going to take over the world. And you kind of, most companies, I would say, on B2B SaaS companies have always had an API, right? Like, so you can make some sort of deterministic calls and automations and workflows. And now you're going to have the MCP. So you're going to have, essentially humans, agents in an API or applications, and then you have agents on MCP. It's kind of a new paradigm to think about Like, can you imagine the scoping questions? How many agents do you have? How many agents are going to need access to Salesforce in my database? What are the concurrent calls your agents are going to make? Like, you know, and dude, I bet if you have most people today, they're going to have no freaking idea. Cause like, you don't, like, I know Datadog, we've talked about all the observability, but I don't even know if these systems are throwing off the telemetry needed to measure, to make the informed decisions.
That's so true. We're not there yet.
We're not. Like, how do you, I don't even know. Like, if you're a GTM org, and it's just kind of crazy. So I don't want to go down the rabbit hole too much, but yeah, it's kind of, if you were given $1 million budget, but as a, CRO or VP of marketing, right now everything's generic, it's tokens, but how much of that needs to go to video versus image versus audio versus avatar creation versus content creation versus PowerPoints? Like, you don't even know, like, how much are you spending on skills? How much are your context windows getting crunched? It's kind of like there's so much room for optimization.
I- And you know what? We're probably like inches away from this. Is probably this conversation that like the CRO and like, you know, teams at, Anthropic and OpenAI said or had, and we're probably like, let's just buy or deploy forward deployed engineers so we can start figuring out what telemetry we need. Like, let's just make it look like we're coming in to help people, but let's actually try to figure out where we need to start measuring things.
Yeah. And how far are they going to go down in the stack? And then what are customers going to want to be able to measure? What will they be able to measure? What will the labs keep behind the curtain? Be like, no, you can't measure that. We don't want you to understand how our orchestration tool works. We're only going to give you this much data because we don't want you to try to replicate that with your own open source models as they become commoditized. So I just see all of this exhaust data coming off of these things, and even the SaaS and the applications, that it's so messy that there's so much work that can be done to really dial this in. And I still don't see, we didn't get double the amount of buyers and budget this year, right? Like, so everyone's still fighting for essentially the same pie plus 2%. Like, right? GDP is growing at what, 2% a year? I mean, so next year is going to be 2% bigger, and the year after that, and next year. So either you have to kill companies and revenue goes down, or you have to find productivity, or you have to figure out how to stand out from the noise in the system. So I say all this to just be like, keep your head down, keep working, but there's like definitely like real problems that still have to be solved, even in this quote unquote like pre-AGI world with all these LLMs. So that would be my ending thoughts, I guess.
I'd agree. Yeah. It's interesting. Early days, sunken costs, and figure it out later.
Yeah, let's go spin up a comic book and a couple of avatars while it's still free 99, more or less.
Yeah. My company is probably like, what did we just spend? No, just doing creating comic books.
Well, it's funny. So I have subscriptions, all three. So I went to Gemini, I went to ChatGPT, and I went to Claude. Hey, create me a thumbnail for XYZ. And so the other ones did an image in an interesting way, but Claude did basically an HTML and then converted it to a PNG, and then I could download it. So they don't have an image model per se, but I was like, that's pretty interesting. It looked good. It looked professional. So kind of similar theme. I was like, oh, that's cool. So,
But that too is interesting. We haven't touched on it, and there's not a need to, but it's like they never focused on the images. Like when everybody else was like, oh, we're gonna like in it, and there was that phase where that's all that people used AI for, because was like the novel, like fun thing, and they just like, we're not gonna worry about any of that.
Anthropic's such an interesting company because I think you can go back and read Dario's kind of manifesto on the big areas that they're trying to target in humanity. I think coding, biology, and maybe finance, something like that. And they actually stuck pretty well to their guns. That focus has probably helped them be so successful here. So be back next week with our avatars to do all the heavy lifting for us so we can go to the beach. Maybe not, but tune in next week. See y'all. Have a good weekend.